Hello and welcome to match day 2 of the Championship Predictions from the Honest Football Podcast. I'm Craig Surridge, and with me as always is Mr. Daniel Cody. Let's have a quick recap what happened on the opening weekend of the Championship season. And not many goals. There were 5-1-0s. Only 2 teams scored more than 1 goal, and that was Hull and Millwall. But there were some perfect scores. There was a hat-trick of perfect scores for myself in the Blackburn v QPR, Blackpool v Reading, and Hull v Bristol City in late added time. Thank you, Mr. Siri. But Daniel Kay does get a perfect score as well. He got that in the Sunderland 1, Coventry 1 on Sunday. Not many points after that, but overall, I win match day 1 by 11 points to 6. So let's get on to the Friday night game. It is Birmingham versus Huddersfield. Birmingham, you went to watch them on Saturday away at Luton. They drew 0-0, and Huddersfield lost 1-0 to Burnley.
Yeah, let's get Huddersfield out the way because I think it can be done very quickly. I've got a little bit of criticism for tipping them like Barnsley last year to be in a relegation scrap. They were very unpleasant against Burnley. And of course, it is a little bit hard to judge whether Burnley are very good or Huddersfield are very bad at this stage, but no shot on target, barely had a kick, and I'm more worried than I was even before the game for them now. And I'm sure your view probably not too dissimilar to that. For the Luton Birmingham game and for Birmingham, I've got to give John Eustace some credit. And I didn't think I'd be saying this after this game. We take aside the fact that there were 7 warnings for time waste in the 16th minute and no yellow cards for it. That's a bugbear which gets all football fans. But Birmingham came to be resolute and to get a point. And given what we saw a lot towards the back end of last year, for John Eustace to make that Birmingham defence resolute is an incredible effort. And he's not working with great resources. He's not working with a brilliant squad. He made them solid. He made them narrow, compact, and hard to beat. And as a result, Luton didn't really have many chances that looked like scoring. And Luton last year were the masters of getting in behind, sort of in those inside fullback positions and cutting the ball back from the edge of the byline. So I think it was a really solid performance from Birmingham. The difference is this week, they're playing against a side who didn't have a shot on target. The onus is going to be on them to attack. And I don't know if they've got the ability to do that. The difference is Huddersfield are poor at the back now. I don't fancy their chances against the ball into the box. Deeney, Hogan, Jutkovic, they're going to be a threat. I'm surprised I'm doing this. I'm going for Birmingham to win it. And I'm going for Birmingham to win it with a clean sheet by 2-0. There's going to be lots more teams scoring 2 goals this week, but Huddersfield scared me last week.
Yeah, Huddersfield's the Friday night game on Sky, the first game of the Championship season, and I thought they were really poor. I didn't need to see the second half, to be honest, because I knew Burnley would win it. Yeah, it wasn't great for them. Where we're in, fans are booing by half time. That's incredibly worrying considering it's the opening day. If they were 4-0 down on the opening day, I would definitely be booing that way. It's only 1-0. It wasn't pretty, but it's a lot to work on for Huddersfield. Birmingham, looking at the highlights, done a job. Literally done a job. Didn't really look like they were threatening attacking wise, but been really happy to take a point away at Kenilworth Road. And when Luton got up to the Championship, that they will say, "Well, we should have really got 3 points." Now we're like, "Oh, let's just contain the point. Let's get that." So it's credit to Luton that side. Just lacked a little bit of ruthlessness, Luton, but I'll get to that later. But I'm going to Championship favourite scoreline of 1-1. Right, next up, it's Norwich versus Wigan in the early kickoff on Saturday. Norwich lost 1-0 away to Cardiff, and Wigan drew 0-0 with Preston.
Yeah, it was an interesting weekend, wasn't it? I'm guessing not many people expected that from Norwich. It was a poor, industrious game. It was feisty. There were tackles flying in. I did feel a bit for Grant Hanley because the first yellow card was mistaken identity and the second was maybe a tad harsh. So probably didn't deserve either of his yellows, but it finished 10 apiece. There weren't really any chances. And I think Dean Smith alluded to it after. There's got to be a little bit more cutting edge. So a worry for Norwich away from home. But we're not expecting to see fluent performances at the start of the season. Wigan were actually decent against Preston. Again, a bit like you mentioned a moment ago for Luton, which we'll get to later, lacking a ruthless edge. They relied on Ben Amos once, who made an unbelievable double save in the game. But apart from that, Wigan was solid. But this is the sort of game where Norwich have to win at home. They need to get the start rolling. And you'd expect them to be a bit more front-footed. It's not going to be a repeat of the opening day. It'll be narrow. I'm going to go for Norwich to win by 2-1. But I think this will be a really close game.
Wigan, yeah, fine. I didn't have any problems with Wigan. Norwich were very poor against Cardiff. And that's a credit to Cardiff. I think Cardiff made it ugly, but they won't in this game. So I'm going to go Norwich to win by 3-1. Right, next up, Bristol City. They're at home to Sunderland. Bristol City lost late on to Hull by 2-1, and Sunderland drew 1-1. It's a bit of deja vu for Bristol City. Concede late goal and concede more than one goal.
Yeah, the late goal is an issue. I mean, we've mentioned it countless times. We're almost getting bored of saying it now. It's a constant problem for Bristol City, and it has to be game management. However, I think we're a bit harsh because the first goal, the penalty, was a scandalous decision. I'm sorry.
Look, there's contact. There is contact.
There's contact.
The guys made that. The whole player's made an absolute meal of it, and the referee's got a clear view on that. Yes, he's got the contact. Maybe he's trying to say, well, there's no advantage. I'm just playing devil's advocate here, but why would you dive in?
Agreed, but if we're going to give penalties for that every week, we are officially a non-contact sport, basically. That's my argument on that front. But either way, it's a very harsh penalty. A mixed day for Cal Naismith because his delivery for the first goal for Bristol City was excellent, but obviously didn't finish his debut quite as well. Let's move on to Sunderland because they were pretty solid on the Sunday. Yeah. Looked consistent, looked solid. They weren't by any means fantastic. I didn't expect that. But if it wasn't for a moment of absolute brilliance by one of the best strikers in the Championship, they would have nicked it 1-0. So I don't think there can be too many complaints, but they're going to pick up a lot of points at home this season. They won't lose many. On the road is where I worry. Bristol City have traditionally been awful at home, but they did finish last season with a 5-0 win at home to Hull. We do have to remember that. I'm going to play safe on this one. I'm very sorry, but it got me the perfect score last weekend. Sunderland are going to start with back-to-back Championship favourite scorelines. Tough one to predict, though, isn't it?
It is a tough one to predict. I would like to see how Sunderland do away from home. Obviously, the fans will turn up anyway. It doesn't really matter. There's no question in that. And it makes it a lot sweeter. It's a long trip, win the game, and get back home. I'm going to go for a 2-1 Sunderland win at Bristol City. Right, next up, it's Cal Naismith's former side, Luton. They're away to Burnley. Vincent Kompany's first game ended in a 1-0 win. And as we said for the Birmingham game earlier, Luton drew 0-0 with Birmingham.
Yeah, and I think, to be fair for Burnley, after that performance away from home in the first game, for Vincent Kompany's first home match in the league, the atmosphere should be pretty raucous. But this is the sort of game that Luton always thrived on last year, which was a team that kept the ball, a team that were front-footed. And Luton on the counter-attack often picked off gaps, both with the wing-backs and with a pacey front two. So I'm quite intrigued to see how this one pans out. As I mentioned earlier, it's hard to judge how good Burnley were because Huddersfield was so poor as well. And Luton, they struggled against a very low defensive block from Birmingham, but Burnley aren't going to produce that at home against us. So I've got a feeling this game could be a bit of a thriller. I think there might be some goals in it. I'm going to go... I want to be biased and go for a Luton win, but I'm not going to. I'm going to go for 2-2. I think there's going to be goals.
Yeah, Burnley played a lot of passing. It was probably the most passes they've done, especially in that first half. Then they did the pretty much whole of last season, the Premier League. All right, it's two different coaches and yada, yada, yada. But it looked pretty good. Obviously, Maatsen took his goal well. I think if they had good chances in that first half, especially to really go 2-3 up, that result wouldn't have surprised me. Now, it's Luton. Luton like to spoil the party, especially at home, especially when they're away, sorry. Obviously, a bit of a S-housery from Luton at times last season, away from home, time delays and all that stuff. And we mind like last week with Birmingham, Luton kind of did that as well, away from home. And it doesn't bother me, really. I think Luton might have to do that as well. Crowd gets on their back, Luton sneak a goal, get the goal, 1-0 win. That's Luton last couple of seasons, really. But I think this game might be a bit much for Luton. Even though Burnley squad is a lot younger, it can go two ways. Either Burnley will win 2-1, which I'm going to predict Burnley to win 2-1, or Luton going to nick it 1-0. But I'm going Burnley to win 2-1. So there's no bias for me. I think it's a bit of a tough start. Preston versus Hull. Preston drew 0-0 with Wigan, and Hull beat Bristol City by 2-1 in the last dying seconds of the game.
Yeah, and obviously we said one of the most interesting signings of the summer was John Mikel Seri, and he's become an instant hero, hasn't he, at Hull City? So,
well, a massive deflection, but they all count.
And he will be an instant hero as a result. A very good penalty from Tufan as well. Debutants doing well for them. And do you know what? It wasn't the worst performance in the world. It was a game It was a pretty good yardstick as well because it was a game between two sides who were in very similar positions last season, who had very similar drops and bouts in form. But it's good to see Hull keeping the ball a bit better. Evidence of shotter ball officially coming into the reckoning now. But against Preston, it's going to be a bit of a battle of styles. Preston are a little more direct. They didn't play great against Wigan, but as I mentioned, had a couple of great chances to win it. So it's going to be a big season for Preston at home. They're going to have to pick up a lot of points. I'm not sure this is going to be the game of the weekend, though. And I know the thriller I predicted last weekend was Wigan's game, and it was 0-0. But for Preston Hull, I'm afraid I'm going to go, 0-0. I'm going to go 0-0 again. I think it's going to be a really poor game.
I'm going to go 1-0 to Preston. Have Preston really replaced Cameron Archer? I know he was only a loan deal last season, but...
Troy Parrott's not the same type, really, is he?
No, Troy Parrott is not the same type. But
every week.
Every week. No, I don't think it's the same type of player. I think Cameron Archer's a much better player than Troy Parrott. I don't know where the goals are going to come from Preston. I really don't. So even though I said Preston are going to beat Hull, long term, I don't know where they're going to get their goals from. Hull, yeah, they won the game, got lucky with the penalty and lucky with the second goal. But I worried about their way form as well. So I'm going to go for a 1-0 Preston win. Right. Loftus Road, QPR versus Middlesbrough. QPR lost 1-0 to Blackburn and Middlesbrough drew 1-1 with West Brom.
Yeah, a bit of a game of two halves, that Middlesbrough-West Brom one on TV, wasn't it? 'Cause West Brom were brilliant second half. But Borough, it's the same problem when we mentioned it. Until the strikers come in and get up to speed. I know Marcus Forster's come in now. Akpom's back from his loan. But 16 shots, 2 on target. It's clear where the problem is, and it's exactly the same as last season. QPR, on the other hand, didn't have a shot on target at all. Okay, they were only beaten by a very good strike from Blackburn, but there wasn't much to inspire in that game. And based on that, it's hard to predict, isn't it? Are we just going to keep going for low scores for the first few weeks of the season? Because we were mentioning it off camera, there weren't many team goals at the weekend. There were a few fabulous strikes, a few mistakes, and a few penalties, but there weren't a number of great fluent moves. So I'm not sure if QPR at home will produce a different story. I think both sides will be relatively happy not to get beat in this early stage of the season. So I'm afraid I'm going to have to chuck in another Championship's favourite scoreline because if I predict it enough, I will win on perfect scores this weekend.
I'm going to go 2-0 Borough. QPR are okay. They did lack something, QPR. I know Michael Beale's first game, but I didn't see them really get at Blackburn. Borough, very good first half. Isaiah Jones takes his goal well. Yep. And I thought he stepped up. I know West Brom upped themselves, but I thought Middlesbrough had stepped off a little bit. I think they'll learn from that. It's not a bad point for Middlesbrough. I'm going to go Middlesbrough to win by 2-0. All right, next up, Reading versus Cardiff. Reading lost 1-0 to Blackpool, and Cardiff obviously beat Norwich by 1-0.
Yeah, you can add this one to the category of I don't think this is going to be a good game this weekend because the Cardiff-Norwich game, we mentioned it. Yes, fair play to Cardiff. That's how they were best going to get a win out of it. But it was not a good game of football to watch. One moment of brilliance, though, from Romain Sawyers, the type of player they've brought in who can be a match winner. And fair play to him, he produced the goods on the first day. Obviously, they're going to be without Perry and G, who's suspended. And Reading gave Blackpool a goal early on, and it settled the game. It was an even match. There weren't that many clear-cut chances in it, but you can't afford to start poorly in the Championship. You give up a goal lead, number of times you're not going to win the game. So I do worry for Reading. I still think they're going to be in that relegation mix. I can't see this being a high-scoring game. I'm banking on each defence to make a mistake. I don't know whether to go for someone to nick it, though. I'm going to go for Reading to nick it because I think Cardiff might struggle on the road this year. I was going to go Championship's favourite scoreline, but I can't keep doing it. So I'm going to go 2-1 to Reading. I think there'll be a few defensive howlers in this.
Reading were poor against Blackpool. I just didn't see anything. Cardiff, yeah, great strike. They stifled Norwich out. They made it compact. They made it boring, and they got the 3 points. And you got to do what you got to do to win the game. That's football for you. I'm going to go opposite. I'm going to Cardiff to nick it by 1-0. Right, next up, Sheffield United versus Millwall. Sheffield United lost 1-0 away to Watford on Monday night, and Millwall beat Stoke by 2-0.
Yeah, I mean, let's get the Watford-Sheffield United one out the way. That was another god-awful game. We said it as soon as it was picked for TV, it would be compact, cagey, tight, and pretty boring to watch, and it was. Sheffield United will be disappointed to lose it, though. And I was surprised by a couple of the team selection elements, which, you know, he proved us wrong last season, Heckingbottom, but he doesn't want to start garnering criticism early in the season. In contrast, Millwall, best performance of the weekend, top of the league as it stands, very comprehensive win. Impact of new signings, Charlie Cresswell looked fantastic from set pieces, and it's what Millwall are good at. And they've made sure they're very good at it from the start of the season. Great to see with Jed Wallace leaving the club that George Honeyman's delivering a quality delivery for one of the goals as well. So we are seeing that the like-for-like replacements and the recruitment is very good. I think Millwall are going to be right in that playoff mix, and maybe I'm regretting leaving them outside of that top six now. But against Sheffield United, this is either going to be Millwall S-housing their way to a 0-0 or a 1-0, or it could be a really good game because they are two of the better sides and the more stable sides in the league on paper. Sheffield United have to respond at home. There's not going to be many goals. I want to go Championship's favourite scoreline, but I'm going to go 1-0 to Sheffield United and say really sorry to Millwall because I do deep down think they might nick something.
I'm going Sheffield United to win by 2-0. They have to bounce back. It wasn't pretty yesterday. God awful first half. That was boring. I don't know whether it was the style of football because they both tried to cancel each other out, or the fans just wasn't loud enough. I don't know
it
if
was
it's
slow.
team. The pitch looked dry.
Yeah.
I know that they had Elton John's concert the other week, but it just looked dry and a bit long. So that's probably why it slowed down. Even though Watford scored from a counter attack, which was pretty on the floor, but Sheffield United just looked slow, and I wasn't particularly sure that having Brewster or Sharp on the bench, I think they made a mistake on that one, to be honest. And they got down by a counter attack, and that's a poor counter attack to concede. It really was. Millwall, very good. Clinical set pieces. Charlie Cresswell, son of Richard Cresswell, scored against his dad's old team. But I'm going Sheffield United to win. So I have to apologise as well to Millwall. I don't know why. We've gone Sheffield United, but I think they can play poorly again, in my opinion. So 2-0 Sheffield United. Speaking of Cresswells, Stoke, they're playing Blackpool. Stoke obviously lost 2-0 to Millwall, and Blackpool beat Reading by a goal to 0.
Yeah, and this game's really hard for me because Stoke was so uninspiring against Millwall, but Millwall are a very good side. Blackpool edged a very poor game against Reading, but last season loved a 1-1 draw away from home. But I think they're going to nick this. I've got a feeling, and I hate to say it, and I know Charlie will be screaming when he sees this. I think Michael O'Neill might be the first managerial casualty of the season because the pressure's building.
I was just about to say that as well.
It's very quick that the pressure's building from the fans. They're finished in the bottom half last year. They're cutting the wage budget again. It's a very hard job, but they should arguably be further up with the players they've got. And a home to Blackpool, if they do fall to defeat, that is going to heap the pressure on. And it seems a bit weird because I had Blackpool to go down this season, and I think that will be 6 points out of 6, I'm predicting, or at least 4 out of 6. So I'm going to go for Blackpool to nick it 1-0 on the road. I think they're going to struggle this season, but Stoke, maybe they'll be the Steve Cooper story from this year. Maybe someone will come in September and just whisk them up to the playoffs.
I don't see that happening again. No. I really, really don't. I think
Neither
that was once in a lifetime. I'm not saying it's a fluke. I'm not saying that at all. I just don't see that happening again, especially in the Championship. That's hard to do that in the Championship, so you have to give Steve Cooper a lot of credit. Yeah. I do worry about Stoke as well. That was 2 rank awful goals from set pieces. Didn't look strong, didn't look inspiring. Michael O'Neill is definitely under pressure already because you expect Stoke to be at least challenging for the playoffs. I don't think he's last in the season. I really don't. And they'll probably win this game by 3-0. But I'm going to go for the Championship's favourite scoreline of 1-1. Swansea versus Blackburn at the Swansea.com. Swansea drew 1-1 with Rotherham, and Blackburn beat QPR by 0-0.
Yeah, and what a goal from Travis to win it as well, because it was a pretty average game aside from that. There weren't many chances, but John Dale Thomason won't care because they won 1-0 and he's got 3 points on the board. Swansea, very similar story. Gave away a poor goal from a set piece, but at least for you, it wasn't playing out from the back.
Long throw, though. Long throw. I'm happy with the long throw.
But the other issue for Swansea is they were the better side in the game. They had 3/4 of the ball, but still gave away some sloppy chances. And Michael Obafemi is already in a contention for miss of the season because he hit it one backwards from about 3 yards out. But
it wasn't even 3.
No, it wasn't 3. I'm being polite. But to be fair, he's a good striker and he'll get goals in the season. Overall, not a bad performance from Swansea. Probably should have got the win. At home to Blackburn, I think it's going to be low scoring again. And as I've waited a while, I am going to this time go for the Championship's favourite scoreline of 1-1. But where the Blackburn goals come from, that's going to be an issue based on the last performance.
Different coach for Blackburn. Good win. Could have got a second, but Burns and Diaz was offside. You picked the scoreline probably I wanted to pick. I'm going to go 1-0 to Blackburn. Yeah, I just don't know. It's tough to call. These are teams, obviously, Swansea say they picked up a good point. Should have really got 3 from them. Sit out and Blackburn got the 3 points from a worldie. Right, Coventry versus Rotherham on Sunday. Coventry drew 1-0 with Sunderland and Rotherham drew 1-0 with Swansea.
Coventry were solid away from home. It's a good point. Obviously, they relied on a Victor special. It was a great goal. He's been brilliant for them for the last season and a bit now. And at home, I don't know if you remember, Coventry started with 7 straight wins at home last season, and I bank on them to do the same. I think they're going to have a good season. Rotherham worked really hard, got a good point against Swansea. They're still everyone's favourites to go down in spite of the brilliant manager. And I think, unfortunately, this might be the day where it becomes a very difficult task. I think we're going to see the first really comfortable win of the season. And I hope for Rotherham they can bounce back. But their home games are going to be so important. Coventry, for me, win comfortably. I'm going 3-0.
I'm going 2-0 Coventry. Home form is key. Good points, though. Good points for both sides, to be fair. Coventry weren't particularly great. Consider a sloppy goal. Keeper made an error to come out for the cross. Didn't get anywhere near it. Didn't really look like going to get back into the game, apart from that strike. It was a great strike as well. So Sunderland thought they'd probably sneak it by a goal to nil, but it was a great strike. And that's the championship for you. I've got to be ruthless. Rotherham, very good point. I think of all the teams that I'd be delighted to get point off the mark, it'd probably be Rotherham's home game. Got the point, up and running compared to some other teams. But I'm going to go Coventry to nick it by 2-0. And the final game is West Brom versus Watford on Monday. West Brom drew 1-0. Middlesbrough and Watford beat Sheffield United by a goal to nil.
West Brom, when they made their tweaks for the second half, were absolutely brilliant against Borough. And we saw the Wallace and Swift link up. Wallace probably had one later on he should have squared, which would have then been a West Brom win. But equally, they still look very good. Daryl DK's back to fitness. He's coming off the bench and starting to build his match time. The issue is, and it was the counter that led to the win on Monday night for them, Watford have got a front three at the moment, if they all stay at the club, that can tear any defence apart in the Championship on its day. And while I think that Steve Bruce will probably set up a bit deeper and probably try and prevent that space in behind, that's going to get the West Brom fans on his back. And I don't know where the middle ground is there. So I could easily see Watford nicking some on the counter, but I'm going to have faith in the quality of West Brom. The midfield stars that I love the signings of, I'm going to go for 2-1 to West Bromwich Albion to finish off. And wouldn't it be nice to have 3 goals on a Monday night game in the Championship?
I don't think there'll be 3 goals in the Championship on the Monday night. I'm going to go for the Championship favourite scoreline 1-1. Yeah, Watford going forward looked okay. I know they scored from the counter-attack, but Sheffield United made it easy for them for the counter-attack. I still worry about Watford's defence. Sheffield United got behind in the first half a couple of times. West Brom, good second half, much better second half. I think for these two teams, I think it's who's going to be the most clinical, but I don't see this being a good game either on a Monday night. So I'm going to go West Brom to draw 1-1 with Watford. Let's have a quick recap what we predicted on match day 2 in the Championship. And we only got 2 teams that think was going to score more than 2. I've gone for Norwich to score 3 and Cody's gone for Coventry to score 3. Other than that, pretty tight, like the opening day of the season. Those are predictions for match day 2 in the Championship. Do you agree with us or disagree with us? Let us know in the comments and give us your predictions. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the Honest Football Podcast. You can be a member on this channel by clicking the join button down below. And also you can follow us on Twitter at Honest Football Free. And we'll see you next time.